You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. In the period before the Civil War, known as the antebellum period, there was a noticeable increase in the number of single working men living in the lower part of Manhattan. These young men, often working as firemen or mechanics and earning the nickname B-Hoys, were attracted to the city by the promise of higher wages due to the technological advances and industrial growth that followed the War of 1812. They made the most of their leisure time by hanging out in the theatres and bars near their homes around the Bowery area, known for its lively atmosphere. The Bowery B-Hoys weren't just about fun and games. They were also known for being involved in gang activities, often finding themselves in skirmishes and riots against rival gangs like the Dead Rabbits. James Dabney McCabe, writing in 1872, painted a vivid picture of a Bowery B-Hoy as someone who walked with a swagger, wore his style with pride, and was always ready to stand up for himself, especially against more respectable folk who wandered into their territory. B-Hoy was a term used to describe young working-class men who loved to drink, seek adventures, and have a good time. These men had little love for the upper classes and valued independence, courage, and loyalty above all. Historians caution against seeing the Bowery Boys as a single, unchanging group. Instead, they were made up of several gangs who called themselves by that name at different times, led by various leaders throughout the years. Mike Walsh is often remembered as the leader of one of the earliest versions of the Bowery Boys. Despite being a novel, Herbert Asbury's 1927 work, Gangs of New York, an informal history of the underworld, describes the Bowery Boys as an Irish gang, yet also paradoxically as anti-Catholic, without delving into the complex history of English colonialism in Ireland and its oppression of the native Catholic Irish. Mike Walsh, an Irish-born Protestant, rose to prominence not just as a gang leader, but also as a political figure who fought for the rights of the working poor. Under his leadership, the Spartan Association was created to bring together factory workers and unskilled labourers for political action. Despite facing legal troubles and imprisonment, Walsh's popularity among the Bowery Boys was such that they managed to bail him out during his second jail term. The newspaper The Subterranean hailed him as a defender of the working class when he faced what they called infamous persecution. Walsh's political career saw him gaining the support of figures like Walt Whitman and making bids for legislative positions. Upon his death in 1859, he was remembered in The Subterranean, possibly by Whitman, as a talented but impulsive leader. The Bowery Boys reached their peak during the New York draft riots of 1863, where they played a significant role in the looting and chaos that engulfed New York City, battling rival gangs, the police, and the Union Army. However, by the end of the 1860s, the gang had fractured into different groups, and the Bowery Boys as a collective force gradually faded from the scene. George Foster, a travel writer from the 1850s, gave us a vivid description of the style and swagger of the Bowery Boys, a group known for their distinctive appearance and attitude in New York. He observed that for a Bowery Boy, looking good was as crucial as breathing. Picture this: a perfectly placed black silk hat atop well-oiled hair, a cravat-tied sailor style peeking out from under a turned-over shirt collar, a vest boldly patterned with large flowers under a black frock coat, simple yet significant jewelry in the form of an engine company insignia pinned to the vest, fashionably late black pants, sturdy boots, and a signature half-smoked cigar tilted just so in the mouth. Despite wearing no excessive jewelry, their look was completed with a confident walk that was all their own. Not exactly a swagger, but a distinctive swing that set them apart. Foster then prompts us to ponder, who exactly were these so-called bohoys and gals of New York? According to him, you might find them in various roles around the city, perhaps as a diligent clerk at a trading house, maybe a junior partner at a wholesale grocery, or even a well-respected young butcher, recognized by his robust frame, a blue coat, a sleek silk hat with a crepe wrapped around its base, known affectionately as a Bowery Boy. The Bowery Boys were a group known for making the theater scene in New York City uniquely theirs. They essentially brought the vibe of the streets into the theaters instead of the theater influencing them to adopt a more formal public demeanor. Richard Butch highlights this in The Making of American Audiences by saying they brought the street into the theater, rather than shaping the theater into an arena of the public sphere. Specifically, the Bowery Theater was a hotspot for the Bowery Boys. Opening its doors in 1826, it quickly became a gathering place for the working class. Walt Whitman once observed that the theater was packed from ceiling to pit with its audience, mainly of alert, well-dressed, full-blooded young and middle-aged men, the best average of American-born mechanics. The influence of the Bowery Boys was so significant that plays featuring characters similar to them, including one named Moses, who they thought embodied their spirit, started being performed. The atmosphere in these theatres was very informal, with men often drinking, smoking, and socializing with prostitutes. As working-class citizens began earning higher wages, they not only experienced social mobility, but also had more disposable income to enjoy forms of entertainment like the theatre. This shift led theatres, including the Bowery and the Chatham Theatre, to tailor their shows to appeal to the tastes of audiences similar to the Bowery Boys. Theatres introduced a variety of acts, even modifying Shakespeare's plays to include slang and popular music of the time. The atmosphere in these theatres could get quite rowdy, especially in the cheap seats or the pit where the Bowery Boys liked to sit. They were known to demand encores of songs and dances, sometimes even taking to the stage themselves. They weren't shy about expressing their dislike for certain performances, often through throwing food or vocal disapproval. Francis Trollope described an equally unruly scene in Cincinnati, noting the incessant spitting and the mixed smell of onions and whiskey, which made even the best performances hard to enjoy. Despite the chaos, there were those like Walt Whitman who looked back fondly on these experiences for their raw energy and the sense of community among the working class. This sense of community among theatregoers wasn't always peaceful, however. The Bowery Boys were also involved in the Astor Place riots of 1849, which erupted due to class tensions and a rivalry between actors Edwin Forrest and William Macready. This event showed how deeply connected the world of theatre was to the social and political currents of New York City at the time. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.